Hey everybody, welcome back to another video. Today we're going to be talking about 3 advances on the Bakhmut sector and sort of the dynamics of the front line here. The Ukrainians actually took over one of Russia's most important positions in the south of Bakhmut, as well as broke across their main line of defense in the south, but we'll get to that in a second because I'll just go from the top down and we'll talk about dnipro right now. The dnipro direction is important because the Russians' main goal after Bakhmut was to take Chasiv, and if they can take dnipro and continue pushing this direction, that would put Chasiv in a pretty uncomfortable spot being flanked. The Donetsk Canal goes right along this road, and it's Ukraine's main fortification to stop a further advance into Chasiv. This line is currently what's holding the Russians down here by kolomyichykha and avdiivka. Back in June of last year, the Russians had actually pushed out to the outskirts of Belarus and were threatening this area of Stupochi right by Ivanivske. However, over the summer through June and July, the Ukrainians were able to push the Russians back to Klishivka and retake the settlement. Right now, it's Russia's goal to try to pierce this fortification in as many places as possible so they can flank Chasiv. But the good news that's coming from here is that Ukraine has a great geographical advantage. If I put on the topographic map, you can see that they have the height advantage in most of the region, but that actually did get threatened when the Russians took over this small position right here. If I switch to the satellite map, you can see it's just a little junction of where some tree lines meet up, but there were some good fortifications in that area. However, the Ukrainians counterattacked in this region, and the Russians had to fall back to this tree line right here. This is a really good fortification for Russia because they can see any advancing Ukrainians a while away. So to kick the Russians out of here, it may be the best idea for Ukraine to try to attack up north and flank this fortification. With this fortification by the tree lines re-established, the defense of dnipro will become a lot less complex. Another area where there's still battles going on is inside of this railway right here. The Ukrainians still control the exit of this tree line and are holding the Russians in this area. There's also strong fortifications in this little junction right here between the road and the railway. Is this even a railway? I think it is. Yeah, that looks like that's a train. Damn, that looked like a pig right there. What is that? Look like an armadillo. Another area where it's important to hold defense is between dnipro and Vasilivka in this area right here. You can tell on the topographic map that this hill right here is important to hold because this hill is the last thing between the Russians and the Donetsk Canal up here. If we put on the satellite map, you can see that the Ukrainians are currently holding the Russians inside of this junction right here of all the tree lines. Ukraine has a lot of good fortifications in the region, like these tree lines along here and this big forest in the area, which would make an attack going this way up the hill difficult because of crossfire from the forest. And this is the ideal vector that Russia wants to attack on because it'll get them the height advantage. As long as these fortifications hold, the advances should be halted in the area, and seeing Ukraine recapture this one by dnipro is a good sign. The next area I want to talk about is this area down by Klishivka, where the Ukrainians managed to penetrate one of the Russians' main defense lines here. If I turn on the satellite map, you can see that this is an area where the Russians were using a lake as defense, and the Ukrainians have just pushed out to this black line up here. They managed to secure all the positions through this area along this road and inside of this tree line right here, which is their main sort of post of operation here. The Russians were using this main rail line, which goes along here. I'm confident this one's a rail line, as their main defense network, and the Ukrainians have also pushed past it in this one area by Avdiivka. They've managed to secure the tree lines across the railway in this area, and the Russians have a lot of defense allocated in this area because they don't want the Ukrainians going further and reaching south under Bakhmut, because this could help the Ukrainians target the Russian supply lines going into Bakhmut, which could lead to it becoming effectively encircled. Seeing another push in this direction is good because it indicates that there is progress moving here, and it's also showing that the Russians may have used up all their resources in this area or moved them to areas of the front like Avdiivka or Kharkiv. The final area we'll talk about is this area right here by Kolomyichykha. Kolomyichykha is an important settlement because it's kind of the keystone into this area on this big hill right here by Bakhmut. If Ukraine gets positions inside of Kolomyichykha, Avdiivka is going to become a lot harder to hold because the Ukrainians will have 3 attack vectors to attack it. And having control of this hill right here gives the Ukrainians visual control over most of the supply lines into Bakhmut. This lets them send even more drones to target these areas more effectively. And an advance has happened that's making an attack on Kolomyichykha look more and more possible. The Ukrainians liberated a big tree line right here, which was the Russians' last sort of line of defense here. The only positions that the Russians have now are along the outskirts of the town, so this area between the two places has become a gray zone. I can't underestimate how important this is because this tree line had been turned into a major fortification. The Russians have been holding the Ukrainians here since the June 2023 counteroffensive. The trenches don't show up on Google Maps because it takes a lot of energy to like take a picture of every place on Earth, so satellite images only come every couple years or so. But now that the Ukrainians have taken this gives them a way better assault vector into Kolomyichykha. They couldn't just go around it because of crossfire that could come from these 2 tree lines that Russia controls, and they weren't able to liberate this section right here because the Russians just had a good enough supply base to reach stuff from Kolomyichykha. Svatopivka. But now that the Ukrainians control this fortification, I wouldn't be surprised if we start seeing assaults into this settlement. There's also a small passage south that goes into the residential part of the town. The canal actually stops above ground in this region and goes underground, but it's likely that this area is heavily mined and the Russians would expect an assault from this direction because it's like, it kind of just looks like a trap. Right now, the Ukrainians just hold positions inside of the tree lines right next to it. And that's all I've got for today. I hope you like the more detailed analysis. This usually my raw recordings are like 8 minutes. This one's 17. I want to start doing more terrain analysis in my videos and just do more general overviews of some of the frontline cities. And I won't make you guys pay $15 a month for it. Now, I'm not throwing shots at anyone in particular when I say that, but all I'm saying is like, I can't even make regular content for my channel, so I'm not going to make anything exclusive. All information and analysis should be free to access and it shouldn't be behind a paywall. So hopefully we'll see some stuff happen, and that's all I got for you guys today. I'll see you later.